In the land occupied by the Balts, the early Iron Age periods, that is the early Iron Age and the old Iron Age, are dated 550 BC to 450 AD. The millennial history witnesses the mature periods of ancient Greece and Rome, and in the Baltic world the maturity and spread of the Baltic culture, which was also influenced by regular relations maintained by the Balts with Greeks and Romans.
Baltiškoji barbarų pasaulio dalis graikų antikos laikais buvo didelė, nuo Vyslos iki Okos rytuose, nuo Daugavos šiaurėje.
During the times of ancient Greece, the Baltic part of the barbarian world was quite large. It stretched from Vistula to Oka in the east, and from Daugava in the north to the area near the Dnieper River in the south. It is but natural that such big part of Europe had to catch the attention of scientists of the ancient world. The early archaeology-related literature states that the Greek father of history, Herodotus, could have been the first person to describe the Baltic tribes. While describing the Scythians and their living environment, Herodotus mentions quite a few Baltic tribes, including the Nori, the Androphagi, the Budini, and the Borestanites. Some of the modern researchers associate the Nori with the Baltic culture of Milograd, the Budini with the Yuknova culture, and the Androphagi with the Dnieper-Daugava culture. During the Roman times, more people wrote about the eastern Baltic region, and amber was mostly to blame for that. The Romans needed a lot of amber, as they made amber jewelry and amber domestic appliances. They also used amber as a medicine to treat sore throat, and used amber for decorating the arms of gladiators and amphitheaters. The Roman Carnuntum was the start of trade caravans to the Baltic land. Roman scientist Pliny the Elder, who lived 23 to 79 AD, wrote about Baltic amber. He wrote that Emperor Nero sent an equestrian order to procure the supply of amber. Strange as it is, the order was led not by a merchant, but by a noble Roman horseman. Amber was brought in such vast quantities that the amphitheater was decorated with amber, and a different kind of display was made each day that gladiator fights took place. Amber was also used for the decoration of the gladiators' arms. Germania, written by Publius Cornelius Tacitus in 98 AD, was the first work to ever describe the Balts that are called Aesti. The whole Article 45 is used to describe the Aesti. Quote, "On the coast to the right of the Mare Suebicum, the Aesti have fixed their habitation. They resemble Suebi in appearance and customs, and speak a language related to that spoken in Britain. They explore the sea for amber, called glessum in the language, and are the only people who gather that curious substance. It is generally found among the shallows, sometimes on the shore." End quote. The Aesti, described by Publius Cornelius Tacitus, are the Sambian Prussians and people living on the Lithuanian seashore, as it is only on these shores that the amber-bearing layer is located. Claudius Polemi, who lived between 90 and 168 AD, was the first to mention the Baltic tribes of Galindians and Sudovians. In his Geographia, he describes some of the tribes living in the Baltic Sea basin. At least 1/3 of all the tribes mentioned by Claudius Ptolemy are Baltic. However, a unanimous agreement is reached only regarding the Galindians and the Sudovians. The Pointinger Road Routes is another map providing information about the Baltic lands. It was compiled in Rome at around the end of the 4th century. It shows the Selianus River inflowing into the Baltic Sea. Many of the researchers are inclined to think that the Selianus River is Daugava, and they associate its name with the Selian tribe. Hence we may conclude that the interest in the Balts was shown in antiquity. And naturally, one may wonder what experience in communication the Balts did gain, and whether it had any effect on social relations of the Balts. Unfortunately, the Balts did not leave any written monuments behind them. Prehistoric reconstruction of the social life of the Balts is based on archaeological sources. The Balts often refer to the Roman antiquity as the period of Roman emperors, or the Roman period. It is done to emphasize the exceptional importance of that communication for the Baltic world. Is this so? The foundation of the economic life of all old communities lies in their own production experience and their own production power, such as farming, animal husbandry, hunting and fishing technologies, and crafts techniques, especially those of ferrous and non-ferrous metal industry. In this sense, the Baltic world is independent. It is evidenced by the network of settlements and burial monuments, a vast majority of unique armory industry and domestic appliances, as well as jewelry. Thus, the backbone is our own, that is Baltic. Impacts may manifest themselves in very different ways, such as by taking over new farming methods, new communication manners and fashions. However, it hardly changed the traditional farming, law and family, community or tribal relations. Innovations resulting from the relations of the Balts and the Romans are not very abundant. Without any doubt, the biggest benefit brought to the Baltic land by the amber trade was non-ferrous metals such as copper, tin, zinc, and their alloys such as bronze and brass. Great abundance of metals was brought from the Roman provinces near the Danube River. Nobody has ever counted the quantity or weighed all the metals brought. However, the scope of the trade will become obvious for many if we say that in the 2nd century a brass bracelet weighed 54 to 180 grams. A huge and continuous flow of non-ferrous metals and the technology of extraction and production of iron from bog iron ore, mastered by the Balts in the 1st century, triggered the development of local crafts. Another novelty related to communication was the spread of money of the Roman Empire in the Baltic world. Roman coins are found in burial monuments and settlements of the western Balts dated the 2nd and the middle of the 3rd century. There are different opinions regarding the importance of Roman coins in the life of the Balts. In the second half of the 19th century, German archaeologist Adalbert Besenberger claimed that Roman coins were used by the A3e as raw material for making jewelry and domestic appliances. This opinion is viable even nowadays. If it is so, then why did these coins occur in burial places? Maybe they were put only in the graves of craftsmen, so that they would have raw material right at hand in the afterlife. Maybe the pagan religion saw the afterlife only as the mirror of this earthly life. No. Elements of abstraction and symbolism are easily visible in the burial places of the 2nd to 3rd centuries. Also, coins are found in graves of men, women and children. Some graves contain only one coin, others contain several or even several dozens of coins. In some graves, coins are the only shroud. They are found in leather bags, tied to the belt, just like in Roman burial places. The idea that Roman coins were used as money in the Baltic world was stated in works by Mykolas Michelbertas. Baltic tradesmen had to become acquainted with Roman money in the course of regular trade. Even Publius Cornelius Tacitus, when describing the relations between the Romans and the Germanic peoples, stated, quote, "They taught them to accept money." End quote. It is highly unlikely that the A3e, who traded amber on their lands, did not know about the existence of money or did not use it. Quite another issue is whether Roman money was widely used in domestic trade. We shall not get a clear answer to this question. We can only say that Roman coins are also found in locations remote from the Sambian Peninsula on the Baltic Sea. Mykolas Michelbertas associates Roman coins with possible new developments in the spiritual life of the Balts, such as images of the afterlife. It was a tradition in the ancient world to put coins into the mouth of the deceased so that he could pay Charon, the ferryman, who took the spirits of the deceased to the world of the dead. This tradition was adopted by some Germanic tribes, and sometimes coins are found between the teeth of their deceased. Apparently, this tradition was modified a bit until it reached the Baltic tribes. Some of the coins found in Lithuanian burial sites should be treated as the payment for the entrance to the world of the dead. Thus, the relations with the Romans could have resulted in the adoption of some elements of their world outlook by the Balts. Incidentally, this interpretation based on images of the antiquity also supposes the need for payment, and not just any payment but payment in cash. Thus the Roman culture had no specific influence. The fact that the Baltic people wore imported enamel and glass beads, broad brooches and other jewelry in unseen or exotic shapes, as well as exquisite dishes, does not mean that their culture was influenced. Rather, it demonstrates the high level of the culture of the Balts that had its fashion trends and the yearning for luxury, just like in Rome. On the other hand, Roman non-ferrous metals allowed the Baltic crafts, including jewelry, to flourish. Bronze and brass jewelry of the Balts stands out from the rest of the European barbaricum. It is characterized by its subtle forms and the extraordinary feel of the shape. Baltic art objects can be found in the Germanic world as well as in the metropolis of the Roman Empire.